Very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would begin by asking for your indulgence because I was actually offered to prepare an intervention of 15 minutes, and when discussing that with President Galtieri yesterday, it was agreed that I could speak for 15. But if you want me to stop at 10, I'll stop at 10, whatever. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de ce comité, I'm very honored to appear before you, and I'm actually very intimidated to appear before you. The only consolation I find is that many of you in this room probably find themselves in the same positions as I am. You're joining, I'm a candidate, you're learning, I'm learning as well, and we come with all the goodwill, the determination, and the enthusiasm for the cause that we are prepared to serve. I believe that the relationship between the European Parliament and the ECB is a cornerstone of our monetary union. Central bankers are independent, but they're not directly elected. And as a result, that can only be justified if they are held accountable vis-à-vis those representatives that are elected. I therefore consider the opinion of the European Parliament as a key step in my appointment process. Now, when presenting to you this morning, I hesitated between giving you a European economic outlook or giving you a technical discussion about various matters of monetary policy and other matters. But I resolved that it might be more interesting to actually highlight some aspects of my professional experience and background, which I consider relevant to the tasks of ECB President. I have been the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund for the last 8 years. And I've had the privilege to head an institution that is the core of the global financial safety net and whose governors are themselves central banks. In that capacity, and also as Finance Minister for France, I have contributed to enhancing the crisis resolution tools and the financial regulations on both the European level and the international level. I have also been directly involved in strengthening the European and Monetary Union. Now, what has driven me in conducting those tasks is certainly the determination that it is worth all the while to actually serve public interest and to deliver on the justified expectations of the people. I was sadly made aware of the critical impact that some lack of regulation or lack of decisions can have on the people. And I was also mindful of the profound impact that decisions of public institutions can have on people's lives. In my positions in previous life, I've always tried to focus on what are regarded as fundamental issues. At the IMF, contrary to all expectations, it meant focusing also on rising inequalities, focusing also on climate change, focusing also on promoting fairer and more inclusive growth. These were not necessarily regarded as macrocritical by that institution, which mandate was to focus on macrocritical matters, but eventually it became regarded as macrocritical, and I'm glad that I insisted on those. But good leadership is not just about setting priorities. It is also about listening to all voices, not just experts' voices, but all voices, and fostering diversity of thought. At the IMF, I, of course, worked very closely with top-notch economists in order for them to produce evidence-based and data-led decisions. And I listened carefully to staff to develop a common and modern vision of the IMF work. Making the IMF more inclusive, enhancing its diversity, and opening it to civil society were central to my strategy. Why do I say all that? Because it is those same values that I believe in that I would promote if I was confirmed as ECB President. And in my remarks today, what I would like to focus is on 3 of those principles that I regard as critically relevant for the purpose of the task. The first two that I will handle together is commitment to the ECB mandate as laid out in the treaty. The second is agility in responding to the new challenges. I will handle these two together. The third one, which to me is critically important as well, is inclusiveness, and I will explain how I understand inclusiveness in that respect. So commitment and agility. We know and have known for decades of theory and practice that a clear mandate for monetary policy and the central bank's commitment to pursue it are vital for stability and welfare. And since its inception, the ECB has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to that goal. In its early years, it achieved the remarkable feat of steering a diverse monetary union in a regime of low and stable inflation. But then it faced an abrupt change in 2008, when it had to fight not inflation, but deflation. Again, the commitment was crucial, this time to ensure that price stability was not jeopardized by a long period of what I have termed lowflation. And in doing so, the ECB had to adjust to the new challenges that it faced at the time. It had to reappraise prior convictions in the light of evidence and experience, and to be innovative in its policy toolkit within the boundaries set by the law and in accordance with the mandate. And it was this agility that allowed the central bank to continue delivering in rapidly changing circumstances. Without that ability to innovate at the time, the crisis would certainly, in my view, and in the view of most experts that look at it seriously, would have been a lot worse. In fact, the ECB itself did some research into that to assess what would have happened had it not been innovative, had it not responded with agility, and concluded that the economy would have been 2% smaller if it had not entered into unconventional measures since mid-2014. Which is not to say that before 2014 there was no such unconventional measures as well. Employment in the euro area also increased by over 11 million new jobs since the trough of 2013, as those measures boosted confidence in the economic recovery and encouraged job creation. So if confirmed as president, I would draw on the same sound principles, sticking to the commitment that is embedded in the mandate, but using the agility to adapt to the world as it changes around us. The challenges that warrant the ECB's current policy have not disappeared. The euro area economy faces some near-term risks, mainly related to external factors, we can discuss that, and inflation remains persistently too low and certainly below the objective. I therefore agree with the view of the Governing Council that a highly accommodative policy is warranted for a prolonged period of time in order to bring inflation back to the famous below but close to 2%. But there are also some important questions on the horizon that monetary policy will need to address. First, though the impact of unconventional policies continue to be net positive, we need to be mindful of the negative effects and the potential side effects of those policies, and we have to take the concerns of the people into account. While remaining committed to our price stability mandate, this requires continuous monitoring and a very careful cost-benefit analysis as is conducted currently by the Governing Council. Second, the global environment of low inflation and low interest rates poses strategic questions for all central banks. It's not just the ECB. The central banks need to enhance their understanding of inflation dynamics, take stock of new instruments activated to contain the crisis, including the use of balance sheets and unconventional monetary policies. And they need to reflect on whether their monetary policy frameworks are sufficient and sufficiently robust to future challenges. This is a task that I intend to embark upon and to join if organized on a broader basis. Third, central banks are increasingly facing new types of challenges, not least related to climate change, to the disruptive impact of technological change, to the potential fragmentation of the current multilateral order. And here I see it as crucial that monetary policy is forward-looking and considers the broader context in which price stability, its mandate, is achieved. Ultimately, the effectiveness of our monetary policy hinges on the resilience of the financial system. The ECB's role in financial stability has expanded significantly in response to the challenges that emerged during the crisis. It has been asked to embrace new responsibilities for macroprudential policy and to host the new European banking supervisor, whom I understand you heard just before me. Supervision has done an effective job in strengthening capital buffers and reducing risks on balance sheets of banks. Common Equity Tier 1 ratios have risen from 11% at the end of 2014 to now 14% in 2018. The stock of non-performing loans, more work to be done, I hear, of most significant banks has now halved in that period of time. But a series of challenges remain. Both banking union and capital market union need to be completed to foster deeper risk sharing in the euro area and expand access to finance. Bank profitability, you've heard it, is low. And the landscape of the financial sector is being changed by the growing role of non-banks in intermediation and technological transformation. The share of non-bank financing flows to euro area firms has risen from around 30% before the crisis to more than 50% today. Those are big changes. They need to be considered when having in mind financial stability. Fintech firms now receive around a quarter of the financial service industry's venture and startup funding. Again, big changes underway. And in this environment, central banks and supervisors need to ensure the safety of the financial sector, but also to open up to opportunities that are procured by those changes. And that means being alert to risks in terms of financial stability, privacy, criminal activities, and ensuring appropriate regulation is in place to steer technologies towards the public good. But it also means recognizing the wider social benefits from innovation and allowing them space to develop in an environment that is safe for financial stability purposes. So, commitment to the mandate, agility to adjust. The third component, which in my view is clearly important, is inclusiveness. And let me tell you what I mean by inclusiveness. The first aspect of inclusiveness in my mind is cooperation. Within the Euro system, there's a huge wealth of expertise that we can draw on to prepare for the future and strengthen our capacity to tackle common challenges. One example of that is the Network for Greening the Financial System, which was launched a few years ago, not long ago, 2017 if I recall, by a few central bank governors, and which the ECB is now a member. Changes will have to take place. Central banks can also play a key role in sustaining global cooperation, thereby helping to underpin the multilateral order in the field where it has competence. This multilateral order is under threat at the moment. Central banks have to close ranks and deliver on that multilateral order. But central banks do not act in a vacuum. The effectiveness of monetary policy can be enhanced by appropriate national and European policies and by the trust of the public. So I see a possibility for deeper cooperation in other areas as well. Completing the single market remains one of the most powerful tools we have to spread new technologies and raise productivity, while also safeguarding consumers and protecting labor standards by avoiding or limiting the social dumping. This holds true for the real economy, and especially in the area of services, but also in the financial sector, which I already touched upon. The role of the Parliament here is instrumental as a co-legislator. Another area of cooperation is fiscal policies. which need to be available to stabilize our economies through downturns and avoid overburdening monetary policy. I was a finance minister for 4 years at the time of the financial crisis, and I have witnessed the difficulties of coordinating policies, particularly in fiscal matters. Because we are focused on our national issues, we tend to go home. And yet, the European dimension can be critical if properly completed in order to resist destabilization caused by external shocks. It has to be effective, it has to be simplified, and this is not something that I invent off the cuff. The IMF has actually done a lot of work in relation to effectiveness and simplifications of the rules that preside over a strengthening and deepening of the markets. In the short term, concluding the reform of the European Stability Mechanism, operationalizing the backstop of the Single Resolution Fund, and establishing a scalable budgetary instrument for competitiveness and convergence would be useful steps forward, but forward. In combination with other reforms to the financial and payment systems, these measures would also help reinforce the international role of the euro. That would afford the euro area more of the benefits of issuing an international reserve currency and a greater degree of strategic independence in an increasingly uncertain world. Second final dimension, to me, critically important, is diversity. I'm always mindful of something that Paul Valéry said after the end of the Second World War. Mettons en commun ce que nous avons de meilleur et enrichissons-nous de nos différences. Simone Veil, when she was president of the European Parliament, didn't say anything different. And I'm also convinced that diversity is a source of wealth. Drawing on all talents from all backgrounds and committing absolutely to all people being treated equally, be that on the basis of gender, of race, of nationality, of background, but it also means speaking and listening to a wide range of voices, as wide a range as possible, and making sure that dialogue is a central part of policymaking. And it is in that respect that I very much welcome the dialogue that we will have over the course of the next few years if I was confirmed. The ECB needs to listen to and understand markets. Need not be guided by market, but it certainly needs to listen and understand. But it also needs to listen and understand the people, because a currency is, after all, a public good that belongs to the people. When at the IMF, I certainly worked really hard to make sure that civil society representatives were included in the process of our deliberations. And I would certainly hope that we can work hard at making sure that civil society representatives and people actually take ownership of what is currently regarded very highly by the people of the euro area, the euro. Unfortunately, we cannot say the same about all the European institutions, but I believe that it is through fostering a strong and vibrant dialogue that we can actually improve that situation. So, to deliver on commitment, agility, and inclusiveness, I believe that innovation and cooperation will be required as much as accountability and communication. I very much look forward to a fruitful exchange with you, and I'm here not only to answer your questions. I prepared hard, but I come with what I have and the experience that I have acquired over the course of time, but I'm also here very much to listen to your views and to appreciate what you expect from a European Central Bank President. Thank you very much, Chair.